2 skirts, one short and one as long as a gown's hem, pushed me. I said, "When The Way We Were came out in 1973, it wasn't just a movie. It was a big deal in pop culture." Which led to a lot of rumors that it had. People in Hollywood talked about an obsession and a love affair that was so intense that it could ruin lives. The golden boy of American movies, Redford, and the powerhouse singer-turned-actress, Streisand, got caught up in a story they made up, and fans thought it was doomed to end in tragedy. So, when the shocking news came out that Redford had died, but whole generations of people who grew up believing in that classic relationship were also shaken. Streisand was the person everyone was looking at, because many people still thought she knew Redford's secret. But she didn't say anything, which led to tales of broken hearts, guilt, and secrets that were too dangerous to come out. She didn't say a word for days. Fans were getting antsy, worried, and desperate for a sign. And now, finally, the silence is broken. Streisand's words have come out, and they are raw, stunning, and full of surprises that no one could have seen coming. The world is still shaking from what she said, and many people say this is not the finish they were hoping for. Bob Redford went from being a boy from a small town to a Hollywood star. Robert Redford wasn't just an actor. He was a star in Hollywood, and his personality could take over a screen before he spoke. From Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid to The Sting and his powerful role opposite Barbra Streisand in The Way We Were, Redford made a name for himself as one of the great actors of all time. However, he was just Charles Robert Redford Jr. before he became famous, won awards, and had the golden hair that became a symbol for a whole generation. He was a restless boy from Santa Monica, with dreams much bigger than the simple life he was born into. He was born on August 18, 1936, to Martha and Charles Redford Sr. His family came to New York from Ireland, Scotland, and England in the 1800s. The grit they brought with them would come back to Redford himself. But his mother Martha was the one who really made him who he was. They were kind, watched out for him, and always encouraged his artistic side. When she died suddenly at age 40 in 1955, it was a huge blow to him. Redford never totally got over her death, and he often said that it changed the way he thought about love, family, and purpose. Redford grew up in Van Nuys and spent the summers in Texas under his grandfather's big skies. It was there that he formed a connection with the land that would shape his action. Still, he wasn't a great student. He was the bad kid at Van Nuys High because he cared more about art and sports than school. Work. He practiced tennis with Pancho Gonzalez, fought polio at age 11, and pushed himself with a strong will. He finished in 1954 and went to the University of Colorado. He lost his grant and his place, though, because he was drunk and careless. What looked like failure turned out to be a new start. Redford ran away to Europe. He painted and walked around France, Spain, and Italy, looking for art and fun. He went back to New York to study at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts and the Pratt Institute because he was hungry to make art. By 1959, the rebellious son of Santa Monica had made a new life for himself in Manhattan. He was now an artist, but Hollywood would soon make him into a celebrity. Before Robert Redford became the face of Hollywood, before Sundance and the festival that bears his name, he was a young actor in New York who had to work hard to make it in a business that wasn't exactly ready for him. It took time to become famous. It started on Broadway in 1959 with Tall Story, where it had a small part that wasn't even noticed. It was followed by The Highest Tree and Sunday in New York. In 1963, things really got better, when he appeared in Neil Simon's Barefoot in the Park with Elizabeth Ashley. In an instant, Redford wasn't just another star. He caused a stir and was seen as someone who would do great things. While Broadway made him famous, TV was like boot camp for him. After 1960, his face was everywhere. The Americans, Maverick, Naked City, The Untouchables, The Twilight Zone, Dr. Kildare, The Virginian, and Alfred Hitchcock Presents. He became more trustworthy after being nominated for an Emmy in 1962 for the voice of Charlie Pond. He got his second movie part that same year in War Hunt. He then worked with Alec Guinness in the dark comedy Situation Hopeless. Not really, though. By 1965, he had won a Golden Globe for his roles. Lee as a damaged star opposite Natalie Wood in Inside Daisy Clover. They got back together with Charles Bronson a year later in This Property is Condemned because they got along so well. By the mid-1960s, it was clear that Redford was on the rise. He worked with Jane Fonda in Arthur Penn's movie The Chase, which also starred Marlon Brando. This was their only movie together, and it was a powerful clash of ages. Barefoot in the Park, 1967, a huge hit, showed how well Redford and Fonda got along. That made him an even bigger star. The spark they had on screen would last for decades, coming back in movies like The Electric Horseman and Our Souls at Night on Netflix. But Hollywood's golden boy wasn't happy. Offers kept coming in. The Graduate? Virginia Woolf. Who is scared of her? But Redford turned them down because he wouldn't be pigeonholed as a good-looking guy. With Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid in 1969, his risk paid off. In front of Paul Newman. His role as the sarcastic Sundance Kid made Redford not only a star, but also a bankable figure. It was proven by a BAFTA win and acclaim for Downhill Runner. Tell them Willie Boy is here. After that, he couldn't be stopped. In 1972, Jeremiah Johnson gained momentum. But the way things were in 1973, Barbra Streisand, who was the opposite, was the turning point. Fans were sure it was real because of how well they got along, and there has been debate ever since. In the same year, he worked with Newman again on The Sting, a super hit movie that made a lot of money and earned him his only Oscar nod. Re-releases of Butch Cassidy put him in a league of actors that hadn't been reached since Bing Crosby in 1974. The Great Gatsby kept his winning run going. Shows had named him Hollywood's top star for 3 years in a row by 1976. Robert Redford had taken over Hollywood. But there was a dark truth behind the success at the box office. It wasn't even his wish to star in The Way We Were. For sure, he would have liked to avoid one of Hollywood's most famous love stories and his own fame. The real reason. Robert Redford didn't want to be in the movie The Way We Were. It seems almost impossible now. But the movie that gave us one of the most important love stories in Hollywood almost fell apart before it even started. Robert Redford could have played someone else in The Way We Were instead of Hubbell Gardner, Barbra Streisand, who was played by Robert Redford. In her autobiography, My Name is Barbara, Streisand wrote about how hard it was to get Redford to work on the project. She always thought the story was true. A relationship between a very political Jewish activist and a wealthy WASP who is against war and McCarthyism. She thought that only Redford could be Hubbell, but she thought he was fine the first time she saw him on Broadway in Barefoot in the Park. She realized how complex he was until he took on a brooding role in This Property is Condemned. Redford wasn't sure, though. He said Hubbell was silly, poorly written, and only there to help Katie's story, so he flatly turned down the part. He was right, Streisand said. She begged Redford's friend and director Sidney Pollack to change the part. Pollack got famous writers David Rayfield and Alvin Sargent to work with him to make Hubbell tougher. She even put pressure on producer Ray Stark to make the deal better. Anything more, like money or lines. It was still no from Redford. Streisand was hurt. Even though Stark told her to move on, Pollack wouldn't give up. Then a telegram came while Streisand was shooting up the sandbox in Africa. Mrs. Barbara Redford. He gave in against all odds. In a strange way, his refusal to give in saved the movie by forcing rewrites that made Hubbell more complex and gave the story more bite. When The Way We Were finally came out in 1973, it was a huge hit. People loved seeing the fiery fighter and the golden boy together and thought they had real chemistry. A lot of people saw the movie and Streisand sang the title song and the film's famous score, which was nominated for 6 Oscars. With a Golden Globe, 2 Grammys, and a huge run at the box office, the movie became a legend. What was its real legacy? The spark between Redford and Streisand that could start a fire. Both very different. They almost never worked together on TV. That's the funny part. There was a time when Hollywood's best love story almost didn't happen at all because of rejection. The love life of Robert Redford. Robert Redford's story is one of the most famous in Hollywood. There was more to his life than just his job. The women in it shaped his personal life. Behind the actor, director, and campaigner was a man who loved deeply, went through heartbreak, and finally found peace in his old age. Redford's love life wasn't marked by scandals in the tabloids, but by loyalty, grief, reinventing himself, and finally finding a partner who gave him balance. In the late 1950s, he met researcher Lola Van Wagenen when he got back from Paris. This was the start of his story. Their connection happened right away. In 1958, they got married in a small wedding, which was a long time before Redford's first movie. They moved to New York together, and Redford went to Pratt Institute to study before he became an actor. Soon after, bad things happened. Scott, their first child, died 2 months after being born. Even though they had 3 more children, Shauna, James, and Amy, the loss still haunted them. As Redford became more famous in the 1960s, Lola stayed by his side. She was with him when Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid went off in 1969. But the attention put on them made their marriage weak. After 27 years together, they quietly split up in 1985, but they still respected each other. Lola later got married again, but her Utah roots will always be remembered because they inspired Redford to create the Sundance Institute and Festival. After his split, Redford's relationships were less active. After a short time with Lena Olin in 1990, she worked with costume artist Kathy O'Rear. He did meet a German multimedia artist named Sibylle Sagers at his Sundance resort in 1996, though. She wasn't as impressed by his fame as other people were. They became friends because they both loved art and working to protect the earth. Their wedding took place in Hamburg in 2009. Redford often said that Sibylle changed his life for the better. They co-founded The Way of the Rain together and worked together until his death, through both happy and sad times, including his son James's death in 2020. For all his fame, Redford's most important part wasn't in a movie. It was in the relationships he built with the women who helped shape him. His real-life relationships kept him grounded, but his on-screen relationships with Streisand, Fonda, and others made it hard to tell the difference between truth and fiction, making people wonder how much of the fire was really there. They loved Robert Redford, but there was tension between them. Robert Redford was Hollywood's golden boy, the hunk with sandy blonde hair and electric blue eyes. But behind that image, things weren't always so great on the set. For decades, women fell in love with him. But Barbara, Streisand, Jane Fonda, and even Meryl Streep, some of his most famous co-stars, told a different story. Redford was very protective of his image, and sometimes that made things awkward with the people who loved him. Look at How We Were in 1973. Both Redford and Streisand were beautiful on screen. Away from the screen, tough. Streisand told him she was in love with him. Robert Hoffler, a historian, said that Redford was wary because of how she felt. He was said to have warned 2 sports supporters to protect himself during love scenes. He even made Streisand wear a bikini in bed scenes to make sure the scenes didn't look too intense. He also said Redford could never be bad in bed, not even as Hubble, when asked to say the line, "It will be better this time." Some people think Streisand and the man are dating, but she has only said they are friends. Still, the stress gave their relationship a spark that people will never forget. After Redford died, she wrote a touching homage about how different they were. Allergies versus horses. Still, that push and pull made working together fun, intense, and a real pleasure. Redford didn't always get along with Streisand, though. Joan Collins. Though they were married, his partner in 5 movies once said she was always in love with him. He didn't like to kiss, and he was always in a bad mood. And she even said he had a problem with women. She told him she sometimes blamed herself for his mood swings at Cannes in 2023, but she still said he was a very good person. For his part, Redford said it was always easy to work with her. Our Souls at Night, 2018, their last work together, showed the softness that lay beneath the rough edges. Then Meryl Streep showed up. It was already a tale by the time Out of Africa came out in 1985. Streep said she had a big crush on him, especially after the famous scene in the river where he washes her hair while reading poetry. In a way, it was a sex scene. She later admitted it, saying she didn't want the day to end even though hippos were in the water. Years later, she talked to B,